Well, hi, everyone. This is Michael, and we're here this afternoon with our 15th episode now of Link with Loveworks. And here at Loveworks, we believe you are never too young to be a dreamer and never too old to do your dream. And Carolyn, I would definitely say without a doubt that today's guest is going to encourage not only the young dreamer, but the older dreamer as well.
I feel good about that because my birthday's coming up and I'm like, am I getting too old? Am I too young? So that's good. Well, our hope with Link with Loveworks is that each week our special guest will connect with you wherever you find yourself today and inspire you to become the best version of yourself for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And let us know too if there is a future guest that you would like for us to interview on Link. And of course, we're here live with Link on Mondays on YouTube and on Facebook Live. But we also have a special Link stream on Thursday nights at 7 p.m.
And in recognition of our special guest today, we're going to be talking about bucket lists. And if you haven't heard of a bucket list before, there's a list of things that you want to accomplish before you kick the bucket, before you die. And so I know most of us have like some ethereal list of things that we want to accomplish, right? But we always push them off until the next year, or we'll wait until we retire, whatever it is. But we want to talk about bucket lists today. So let us know in the comments as well, what's something that you want to do before you die? Michael, I think the hat's a clue.
I had a quick wardrobe change, Carolyn. We had some time there. What do you think? Is this hat a giveaway in regard to what's on my bucket list?
I could guess beach right now. Maybe you want to go to the Hamptons?
About 365 days out of the year. That's kind of true, but no, on the bucket list is the Kentucky Derby. So it's definitely on there, Carolyn. I'm already imagining the outfit that Taylor is going to wear, the big colorful hat, and we're going to just enjoy watching horses.
Ooh, that sounds like a ton of fun. I can't wait to see the giant hat.
Me too. I'd love to hear what's on your bucket list.
I actually really want to visit Tokyo. So it's on my bucket list. There's a particular restaurant that I really want to visit there. It's called Masakichi, and it's a little hole in the wall restaurant in Tokyo, but I've wanted to go for quite a while now. So that's my list.
I love it. So dreamers and doers out there, drop it in the chat box. What is on your bucket list? And I know without a doubt, you are going to be inspired by today's interview. So dreamers and doers, if you're ready, Carolyn and I are ready. Here's the format. You're going to get the opportunity to hear about a guest's dream and about the steps that they took to reach their dream.
Mm-hmm. And to warm you up for today's interview, we have a trivia question about our special guest, Mike Hoang. And so the question is, how many countries do you think our guest has visited? So drop it in the comments. Your best guess, closest person to the correct answer, we will mail you a prize directly to your house this week. So let's meet our dreamer and doer, Mike Hoang. So he's a multiple business owner and he's a 30 under 30 winner. He's a cage fighter. He's a man on a mission with his bucket list. And as a young man, Mike created his bucket list, things that he wants to do before he died. And a few of those things that were on his bucket list, were be at an MMA cage fight, climb a mountain, visit Vietnam where his family is from, backpack across Europe, and other really incredible, amazing things like being financially independent at a really incredibly young age. And so he doesn't even need to work a day in his life anymore, but he chooses to. So I'm excited to meet Mike. Hi, Mike.
Carolyn Lee, Michael Hirsch, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. Excited to talk to you guys.
Mike, we are not only thrilled to have a fellow dreamer and a doer, but thrilled just to call you. I'm honored to be able to call you my friend. I want to give our dreamers and doers out there just a little bit a context. I think this is going to help with our interview today. But Mike, you and I were reminiscing not too long ago, and we met about 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has been. And through a mutual friend, I'll never forget that initial time meeting you and that cup of coffee. And, I'm sitting across the table, from a 20-something-year-old. I like to say I was a 30-something-year-old. I'm making myself
so old and wise in your 30s.
I'm making myself feel young here, but here I am. I'm just getting a chance to meet you, and you were a pretty confident guy. But I wouldn't say that you were overconfident or arrogant and cocky. But you knew what you wanted to do. And I've had a lot of conversations with individuals, a lot of young people, that have a lot of things that they want to do. I call like the wanna do's, the wanna ideas. And there were a lot of things that you told me you were going to do. And now a decade later, you have done that and more. And so I know something that you attribute it to is your bucket list. And so, Mike, let's just start there. What is it that inspired you to put together your own personal bucket list?
Yeah. Well, I will say this because you're bringing this to mind. When I met you, I was working at John Hancock Financial, but shortly after that, I was so broke. I had a dream to be successful in business, to make a lot of money. But around the same time where I met you, it was a season where I was just trying to figure out who I was, how to make money. I felt like God put a dream in my heart to be successful, to create wealth, but I had no idea how to get there. And I had a lot of different businesses that I tried out over the years that didn't work. And I think there's a season in there where I couldn't afford gas in my car. I remember around that season when I met you, I had different appointments throughout the day. And I had one appointment at a Panera Bread, and I put in my calendar to drop by my parents' house to grab my piggy bank because I had $27 in it. So I could go there, grab the piggy bank, then go to Walmart to get cash, go to a gas station to fill up my gas tank to go to the next one because I didn't have enough money to get to the rest of my appointments. So it wasn't like I was some sort of overnight success. I'm not some sort of wealthy guy who's always been like that. I had a grind. I know what it's like to be broke. I know what it's like to have nothing. So yeah, that's Mike Hoang behind the scenes. That you said I was confident. You said I was doing this and that. None of this that I'm doing now was in the picture at the time. So all this is new, but it was a coming into fruition of a dream that I had in my 20s. But in my 20s, so to your question of what got me to do that, what got me to do a bucket list, is I always felt like I was blessed with so many different opportunities, so much skill and talent. But one of the driving quotes, words of wisdom in my life is, to whom much is given, much is required. I feel like I've been given such a big opportunity just to be born here in the United States. My grandfather couldn't read or write. He was over in Vietnam. Like, he was illiterate and he couldn't do math. And he'd tell my dad that if he could do math, if he knew how to read, he would have been so successful. Right. And my dad worked so hard to escape the country. A communist government took over his country, and they escaped the country here to the United States, had $10 in his pocket. And he came here so that we could have opportunity. Fast forward, I'm born here in the United States, and it's just, the world is your oyster here. People that were born here don't realize the opportunities that we have. Literally, if you wanted to become successful, whatever you want to do, you have the opportunity to do that here in the United States. And so for me, to whom much is given, much is required. So I felt like I could do anything I wanted. And one of the biggest fears that I have, a lot of people, when you think about fears, you're like, oh, I'm afraid of spiders, or I'm afraid of ghosts, or I'm afraid of dying, or whatever it is. My biggest fear was being at the end of my life, being on my deathbed, and realizing that I wasted my life, that I wasted all the opportunities that were given me. And so what inspired me to create a bucket list was I put myself in that space as an old man. Because as a young man, if you screw up something, you have the next day to fix it, right? If you didn't work out, if you ate wrong, or if you failed something, you can fix it the next day, or you can get back on your feet. But as an old man on your deathbed, you have no future. So I put myself in that position, in a place where I wasted my life. And I look back on my life, and I thought, man, what were things in my life that I wanted to accomplish? What would have been a life that was fulfilling? And so from that point, I look back at my life, and that's kind of how the bucket list came to be. It was like, here's some milestones of things that I would want to do in my life that were not the things that themselves were important, but they were accents, or they were pointing to a life that I felt that was fulfilling. So that's what's got me to do a bucket list.
Well, I like what you say. The world is your oyster. And I like that you see all of the opportunity. And I can relate in a few different ways. I definitely remember the piggy bank moments that I've had in my life of like breaking that open, hopefully finding enough. But my parents also immigrated from Vietnam, and just hearing even from them like the opportunity that we have here and what we can put in. And so you share about, you put your bucket list together and trying to figure out what exactly you put on there. You say their accents. Would you be able to share with us like a method for someone who is trying to figure out what to put on their bucket list right now?
Yeah, Carolyn, that's a good question. So if you were out there and you wanted to figure out what your bucket list was, I did it in a place where I was just trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, who I was. A lot of guys in high school and junior high, you guys are figuring it out too. And so what I would do is I would look at other people's lives and see what you think would be interesting, a life that you want to emulate, and I would see things that they're doing. For me, it was things like I had something in my heart to do business. And so there's a lot of things in my life that were business related. Yours could be your profession. Maybe you are interested in the medical field. You want to be a doctor, whatever it is. Maybe you're not sure if you want to do what you want to do with your career, but you want to live a good life, have a family. What does that look like? And I would make some milestones like that. So a couple of things that were really important to me was to become successful in business. And so a lot of things like make a certain amount of income, retire young, make $1 million in a year, own my first real estate property, things like that. So, but in my life, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't come from wealth. And so I kind of bucket listed backwards. It's like, well, to make $1 million in a year, how am I going to figure out how to do that? So one of the things on my bucket list was actually to interview 10 self-made millionaires and ask them questions, because I had enough understanding as a young person that if I don't have the answers, someone who's done it is going to have the answers. So I'm going to ask them. So whatever is on your bucket list, I would just kind of work backwards and then set almost like a like breadcrumbs to get to that goal, whatever that is. But to figure out what your items are, your end goal, I would just do some soul searching. It's not something that you're going to figure out day one. It's a lifelong journey. I'm changing my bucket list all the time. And so as you start chewing on it, you're going to figure some stuff out years down the road that you're going to want on it. Don't think that everything's going to come at you sitting down one time and doing it.
So Mike, so good. And you're also saying too that you met with up to 10 self-made millionaires. So is that why you initiated a conversation with me about 10 years ago?
I think yours was just a good connection. You're in ministry, you love God, you love people. Yeah. And our buddy Chris Jensen, if you're watching this, hey Chris, what's going on? He thought we'd be a great connection for each other. And yeah, I've loved watching you from afar this last decade.
You are too kind. And yes, it was Chris that introduced each other. So we were sifting through your bucket list, Mike, of things that you have done, that you have checked off the bucket list. And this part was hard. So we pulled one due to time that we wanted you to spend just a couple minutes on. And it was one on your list that mentioned that you wanted to speak in front of 500 people. So that was a big deal to you. So I'm just kind of curious, like, okay, why was that important to you? And then how did you take those steps? You talked about reverse engineering. So what were a couple of those initial steps that helped you to get there?
Yeah, so naturally, I'm not a great speaker. I think the biggest fear in America isn't death. It's actually public speaking. And so it wasn't something that I was naturally great at. But the reason I wanted to do it is because I felt my entire life that my success in my life wasn't just for me. I wasn't just going to be successful just to line my own pockets. I wanted to inspire. I wanted to let other people know that they could do it too. So I never thought I'd be like a professional public speaker, that's what I did for a living. But I figured that public speaking would be a way for me to be able to impact people's lives. People that are a couple steps behind, or that I've kind of been through their seasons, that I could kind of help navigate along the way. I wanted to inspire those sort of people. And so I thought public speaking would be a big part of that. 500, that number was just an arbitrary number I threw out there, which to me was just a lot of people. So what I did, the reverse engineering of it was, well, how do I get to a place where I speak to 500 people? And one, I knew I needed to have the skill set to do so. And I think I was telling somebody about my bucket list, and they mentioned an organization called Toastmasters. So Toastmasters, if you haven't heard of it, it's basically a public speaking organization where it's like a club. It's a club you join and they do public speaking. So I did that for about 3 years. First meeting was super nerve-wracking. I was so nervous. First speech was a 4-minute long intro, just saying who you are and that sort of thing. I was so nervous. And so I ended up doing that for 3 years. Last year, as the president of my organization, we're one of the top Toastmasters groups in the world at the time. And just through those experiences, I had the opportunity to learn how to speak better, and more opportunities started opening up. So I would speak to a small little workshop, and eventually I got invited to speak to a lot bigger things. I think now the biggest group that I have spoken to is 15,000. I was invited to be the MC for the inaugural Asian Night Market Festival here in Oklahoma City. So our very first event, we had 15,000 people, a bunch of, about a third of them were Asians, very multicultural, whites, blacks, Latinos. It was a really, really cool event, one of the highlights of my life. So I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I didn't put on my bucket list to speak to a lot of people and then reverse engineering it, practice with Toastmasters so that I could get those opportunities in the future.
Mike, that's so powerful. You might have heard of this guy. His name is Warren Buffett, the second or third, richest person in the world. And it's been said that if you were to walk into his office, and you can imagine Warren Buffett, how many, accolades and awards and certificates that he's received in his lifetime. But the one that he keeps up there front and center, early on in his career, he may have been only 18 or 19 years old. He described himself as being extremely shy, apprehensive, didn't like speaking in front of people, even having like one-on-one conversations with strangers. And he enrolled himself in a public speaking course. And that's the certificate. I mean, that's like the moment that he really prescribes as the ticket, that led him, to where he's at today. So I think it's neat. I love this segue that Carolyn, you're going to talk to Mike about cage fighting.
Yes. This is something I'm really excited about because I've been curious about getting into it myself, not the cage, but
wow, I have no idea.
I was like, you probably can't tell, but we wanted to ask you and just talk to you about like preparing for your cage fight. How was that? Like, what did you do to get ready?
Yeah, so the reason I did it in the first place was I'd done Taekwondo. I grew up doing karate basically as a little kid, but I was always a good kid. So I was hanging out with a bunch of nerds and band geeks my entire life. And so I was never in any sort of fight. So if you've never been in a fight before, but you've been training and fighting, part of you as a man, you want to know if push comes to shove, could I really take care of myself? If someone was trying to attack my wife, my kids, could I really take care of myself? What would happen in a physical altercation? So that's why being in a fight was a big deal for me. And so the training for it was, oh man, it was pretty brutal. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. There's one time I remember that my coach, he's my striking coach, I come to practice and he told me that, and this guy was just insane, pushing you to the limit. But this day was very different. It was even worse. He said, Mike, I want to know what your limit is today. And so that entire time we're running sprints after an hour-long workout. I thought I was going to throw up. My legs felt like jello. I couldn't stop running because people were basically pushing me like behind the small of my back as we're doing sprints. Everyone else would get breaks except I wouldn't get a break. I had one of those oxygen deprivation masks where you can like breathe, I think 20% of the normal air as everyone else is. Everyone's getting breaks, running sprints. I didn't. And afterwards, I was so tired. I just collapsed on the floor. And he just kind of looks at me and says, wow, I'm surprised you didn't throw up. If that's any sort of story telling you how hard it was. I've had lots of black eyes. I've had so many injuries, ankle braces, wrist braces, bloody noses. It was pretty tough. So fighters, to get into that realm, you have to be pretty tough. And that's what the training does, is to toughen you up.
I am surprised. It's what a great compliment. I'm glad you didn't throw up either. That is really fun. And so, I mean, you've accomplished a number of things off of your bucket list now, and all of these things have shaped and changed you. You say that your bucket list is changing each and every day. But I wanted to ask, like, how has your mentality and even approach towards life changed as you've crossed things off, as you've accomplished more and more off your bucket list?
Yeah, Caroline, that's a really good question. It's a very deep question. So there's one moment I was actually backpacking across Europe. I was hanging out in France. We were couch surfing, meaning that I was staying at a random friend I met through the social media platform. I was staying on her couch, essentially, her and her flatmates. That's what they call the roommates in Europe. I was sitting there and I realized that I wasn't any happier being on that couch in France than I would be in the United States. I realized in that moment, I was doing such a cool thing. I was posting about it, had a YouTube channel talking about my journeys and everything, and it sounded so exciting. But in the moment, it was just normal, you know. And in that moment, what I realized was it's not really the goal that makes you happy. It's the destination of it. It's the journey. It's having goals, setting them, accomplishing them, but it's not really actually the thing itself that makes you happy. It's getting there and figuring it out, and then being a part of that life. And so many times we as humans we think, oh, I'm going to be happy when I get this car, or when I get this house, or when I meet that girl. But it's not the place that when you get there, it's the journey to get to that place. So as I've gotten a chance to do some really cool things, I realized that the journey is way more exciting than actually getting there.
No, that is, I can definitely appreciate what you're saying about the journey, about the process. Mike, you mentioned France. And so earlier we asked a question about how many countries you traveled to. So drum roll, please. Mike, what's the answer?
The answer is 8.
Okay. And what was the last country that you visited?
Last country was Vietnam. That's where my family's from. So I spent about a month there. Hong Kong, Canada, Mexico. And when I back across Europe, a lot of people visit many, many countries. I wanted to stay at certain places for a long amount of time. So I visited 3. So I was in Germany, France, and Spain.
Okay. Well, Mike, you mentioned you have an ever-changing bucket list. I know there are many that are curious. So what's next? I'm sure there's several, but could you kind of hone in perhaps right now on one that you are working towards today?
Yeah, what's next for Mike Hoang? So on my bucket list, this is actually from my Europe trip, is I always wanted to spend a longer amount of time in one place because I wanted to build relationships. I wanted to build a community. I wanted to pick up a culture. And so I always wanted to live overseas. That's been a big thing on my bucket list for years. And when I was 32, I became financially independent, meaning that I don't need to work anymore if I don't want to. I've run a marketing business that I can run online, so I can work anywhere I want. So on my bucket list, what I'm probably going to be doing later this year is I'm going to be taking a few years off, and I'm going to be going over to Vietnam, Saigon, and I'm going to be living there for about a year or two, about a year and a half to 2 years.
That is such a cool dream to chase, and with such great reason too. So we're winding down our interview, and I wanted to ask you, because we are talking to our middle school and high school students out there that are dreamers and doers. Could you give them a piece of advice that you would want to share with our middle school and high school students?
I would say if you're in junior high, if you're in high school, that I would say that God's instilled into you a a dream, a vision, a purpose. You're not just here just to be here. You're supposed to do something great. I believe that we've been put inside of us something special. And one quote that I love is, "It is the glory of God, the height of matter, and is the honor of kings to seek it out." What that means, I think, is that there's our destiny, our vision, our dream. God's kind of has that, but it's our honor as human beings to figure out what that is. It's this whole journey of life that we're interwoven with our Creator to figure out. And so, what I would say is, man, seek that out. Don't just Netflix. Don't just be on the PS4, whatever you're doing. Life is worth living. A lot of people try to watch movies and that sort of thing to be on this journey vicariously by some characters. But in our lives, you are that character in your own journey. Number one, figure out what that is. That's a journey in and of itself. Number two, you have the strength and capability to pursue it. So use those capabilities to figure out what that is and journey towards that. It could be something huge. It could be something small, but I believe that this life is great, and your life can be great if you decide for it to be.
I love what you said right there, Mike. I think the key, right, is if you decide. I mean, at the end of the day, this has to be a personal choice and decision, that you're making. So I have a feeling you're probably going to tag off of that in this very last part. But Mike, you're going to join a great host of company in our previous link episodes that have answered our 1 minute link. And so what we love to do is we love to give our dreamer and doer 1 minute to share whatever is on your heart that could encourage our dreams. Mike, are you buckled in and ready for this?
I'm buckled in and ready. So
Carolyn's got her timer ready, set, and go.
What I would say is create a bucket list. A quote that I love is, without vision, the people perish. And so have a vision for your life. Look at other people's lives, see what they're doing, figure out what you want to do. Whatever it is, write it down. And then you're so much more, your percentage of reaching those goals are going to be so much more successful if you just simply write that down. You have something to obtain, something to strive for. So number one, just get a pen and paper and start writing it down, start doing it. Do that after this podcast, after this video. Figure out, what do I want in life? You may not know exactly what it is. It could be something that you don't want. Maybe you don't want a life like this person. Maybe you don't want a marriage like this person that you've seen. Say you want success, but you don't know what that is. Just write down what you can, journey to try to figure out exactly what that is, but just start somewhere, write that down and do that today.
You are perfect. It's hard to see. You're at 59.66 seconds.
Wow.
So that was awesome.
That's nice.
Love what you say of just find your purpose, find your vision, and write it down. Our dreamers and doers out there, if you haven't started writing your dreams down yet, I don't know how many people we need to get up on air to tell you, write your dreams down and to start pursuing them. That's so important. So Mike, thank you for sharing with us your wisdom and your advice for us. We're going to give you a quick break. We're going to ask our audience to actually send in some questions for Mike. So if you have any questions regarding MMA, travel, food, even, drop them in the comments, ask Mike, and we'll get to that at the end when we get to our Q&A. But before that, we are going to jump into talking about our digital resources and our upcoming Link Dreamer and Doer.
Absolutely. And as questions are coming in, Carolyn, we want to remind everybody where you can access all things digital. And we do spend a lot of time talking about at-home leadership, but that's not the only digital resource that we have. Of course, we have our link episodes on Monday and Thursdays, and we also drop weekly blogs and podcasts on Wednesday and Thursday. So there's a lot of things that you can access, and all it's at our website. We make it that easy. So just at loveworksleadership.org, that is the place to find all things digital. Carolyn, do you think you're at least a step closer right now in getting to your restaurant in Tokyo?
I think I'm just a tiny step closer. I do. We do have, I want to share about another digital resource that we have, and it's actually one of our fun concept classes, and it's a virtual Zoom class that we get to do on Wednesdays. And so we have one coming up this Wednesday. It's going to be a gardening class, and don't worry, you don't have to pretend you're planting herbs. You can actually sign up for a free kit of soil and seeds that you can actually pick up at the Loveworks Center. And so I know our moderator is dropping in the comments right now the link to sign up for our gardening class. Make sure that you do that so you can have a beautiful garden. Maybe it's on your bucket list. Wouldn't that be great if it was?
I love that. I love it. Well, Carolyn, if you're good, let's get back to Mike. And as we wrap up, we have a couple questions that we're going to have Mike answer. Mike, are you still here?
I'm still here.
You're still looking great. Is everyone liking the mustache?
Oh, yeah. So this took me 3 months in quarantine to grow out. I know it doesn't look attractive. No, I will not cut it yet. But yeah, I've never had facial hair before, so I thought I would try it out. This was the perfect time to do it.
Was it a bucket list?
It actually wasn't. It was basically me being in my pajamas, having cabin fever, being here for days on end. And I'm just thinking, why do I need to shave? I'm just gonna keep this for a while. See how far it goes. I'll let it ride.
That's how I actually cut my own hair and colored it this Saturday.
That's good.
So Mike, getting into a question for you. So in regard to previous items that you've checked off your bucket list, what is one that you found that was the most difficult? And in regard to that difficulty or challenge or obstacle, like how did you get through it?
Ooh, what is the most difficult thing on my bucket list? I would say probably renovating my first house. And so one of the things I wanted to do was to retire young, right? And so I knew that real estate was a way to make passive income. Passive income is income that you make. You do the work once and you keep on getting paid. One example of it is if you write a song as an artist, every time someone plays that song, you get like a piece of that money that people use. Another way to do that is through real estate. So I wanted to get in real estate. With real estate, you buy a house, people pay you rent. And so I was thinking that people could retire young doing real estate. So that's what I got into. So it was really difficult for me to get into because I didn't have the money. Remember in my 20s, I was super broke. I was trying to figure that out. So it took me several years to ask a lot of questions, go to groups that did real estate. I read books on real estate. And then I saved up. I lived at my parents' house until I was 29 years old, which is a lot longer than most people do. But I spent that time saving up money, finally bought my first house. The house was garbage. It was such a bad house, but I had to figure out how to fix it up, renovate it, kind of like the TV shows, like flip that house. So I watched YouTube videos, hired one of my friends to help me out. Lots of questions, lots of blood, sweat, and tears. It took me almost a year to renovate the entire thing, and actually I'm in the house right now. So this is the space. It's a beautiful place. Made a lot of money with it, and yeah, that would be the hardest thing that I did on my bucket list. How to figure out, and that's how I overcame a lot of those obstacles.
That is really cool. Well, you live in a lovely house. So I have another question for you, and it's because you talk about your bucket list has changed. Have you taken anything off that you were just like this is probably not the right vision for me?
Gosh, that's a good question. Really, honestly, I can't think of anything that I have. There's a lot of things that I thought I would do, and I actually have done it, or I'm on my way to. There's some things that have been postponed. I've always wanted to get married, have kids, have a family. That's been postponed. I thought I was going to do that in my 20s, but I don't know, relationships, it doesn't happen the way that you wanted it to. But those things are still there. I'm still believing that that's going to happen. So I would say I haven't taken anything off of my bucket list, but there's some things that I've put in pause for some other things.
Well, Mike, this has been fantastic. A huge shout out to Chris that just made the arrangement for you and I to connect the dots a decade ago. Really been looking forward to this time. It's been actually an inspiration to me just leading up to this interview, just me just evaluating, what's on my bucket list. We are definitely better, Mike, for this time. I think it was Oliver Holmes who said most people go to their graves and they die with music that is still in them. And Mike, I feel like you are like a brass like choir, and you are the conductor, and like you are just shouting out and living out your life, the tune that you were meant to sing and have the world to hear. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. One last thing, I'm going to echo something that you said. But it's a quote from Benjamin Franklin. Something that he said was, the average man dies at the age of 24, not physically, but in his ability to dream. One of the reasons why I think I still have dreams and other people my age don't is because when I was a young person, I wrote down my dreams. I have it on paper. I can still see it today, And it's helped me last throughout that 24 through that 20s and 30s phase. And so if you're watching this, man, write down those dreams so you don't forget.
Mike, thank you. You are certainly a dreamer and a doer.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right. Remember, real leaders don't blend in, they stand out. Dream big.
And do your dream, everybody.